Hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of Compassion and Courage Conversations in Healthcare. I'm your host, Marcus Engel. Your hostess with me, as always, is Marvelyne Engel. Hey, babe.
Hey, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for being with me on the podcast that teaches compassionate communication, provides perspective, and inspires resilience. Today, we are in, well, I guess not just today, but all the days of this month, we are in Disability Pride Month. And I thought I would give a little bit of the history of Disability Pride Month. I want to first start by saying I am by no means a disability scholar, and I am by no means a disability historian. However, having a disability, as I have had for the last 30 years, I am immersed in the communities of disability, and part of that was through my membership in the Association for Higher Education and Disability many years ago, and it really contains today through just different social media factors on what's going on across the disability community. So obviously this month, being Disability Pride Month, has had all kinds of things popping up. And so what is Disability Pride Month? Why do we celebrate it? And what are we hoping to accomplish? Well, it's in the month of July. Do you know why, Marvelyne?
I do not. You know what? I think maybe something was signed during the month of July.
There might be something called the ADA that was signed
A little
in
something.
July of 1990, a little something called the Americans with Disabilities Act, which was the first time Americans with disabilities truly had equal rights in public transportation, housing, and access. And that's something that me having become a person with a disability in 1993, I never had to deal with that potential of being barred from a public establishment because I use a seeing eye dog. I never had to face that potential discrimination that many other people had to face prior to 1990 and still face today to a certain extent. But before there was the Americans with Disabilities Act, there was a lot less reason to celebrate. And so I love to look back on the history that we have been able to accomplish since the ADA went into effect in 1990. And that is really to level the playing field for all Americans, right? Especially those with a disability, so that through simple accommodations and access, we can have equal rights and equal opportunities. Where have you seen this arise in just our life, babe? You've been with me so many times with a dog out in public and seeing different barriers to access, and then also seeing places where access is not only granted but welcomed, and inclusivity comes about. And that's one of the points of Disability Awareness Month too, is that inclusivity aspect. So I wanted to ask you, hun, where have you seen inclusion and exclusion, just having spent the last, I guess we celebrated our 17-year anniversary just a week or two ago. Happy anniversary.
Yeah.
And in our 17 years together, where have you seen that come up?
The first place that I think of is because it impacts our livelihood so much, would have to be travel.
Yeah.
And that is unique to a seeing eye dog, but not completely, because I do know we've friends, etc., who maybe wheelchair users or something like that, who have struggled with accessibility in the same concept, but that you legally can be accepted in any kind of public transportation, just like anyone. And that, when it goes wrong and the person or people in charge of admitting or not admitting it can go really, really, really wrong.
It can go really wrong.
It can go
Yeah.
really wrong and be very painful.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing that I feel like as time goes on and the public continues to practice more inclusivity and acceptance with people with disabilities, we're seeing less of that, but we're also seeing more and more people with disabilities who are empowered to travel and get out on their own because of things like the ADA. Now, there are issues along the way. Nobody's discounting those issues, but it's because of this act signed by then President George Bush that gave individuals like me and many of my friends the ability to live independently, to operate, to function in society and not be treated as second class citizens. And so, this month of Disability Pride Month, it not only celebrates those accomplishments, but I also kind of have to ask the philosophical question: am I proud of my disability? Right? Am I proud of my blindness?
You're about to open a can of worms, aren't you?
Boy, aren't I? Yeah. Am I proud of being a person with a disability? And that's hard to say because I'm proud of a lot of things. I'm proud of my achievements and accomplishments and my family and those kind of things. But when it comes to my blindness, do I hold up a sign that says, "Hey, I'm proud to be blind"? And the truth of the matter is, I don't. I'm not ashamed of my blindness. I'm not embarrassed of my blindness. It just is an aspect of who I am. So I understand that there are some folks who would say, with Disability Pride Month, how do we then authentically recognize and raise awareness without it seeming like a token celebration? And I'm okay with a little bit of this because we have 20% of Americans with a disability. That's a lot of people, 20% of Americans living with a disability. And you're in contact with a lot more people with disabilities than you probably think, because many times disabilities are invisible. And so we wanted to share a little bit of information today that when someone discloses their disability to you, whether that's something that you can visually see and witness, or it's something invisible, such as, oh, say an autoimmune disease, that you actually can have some vocabulary that isn't just token, and it's also respectful, because I think many times people fear interacting with someone who has a disability because they don't want to be disrespectful, and yet they withhold their offer of assistance because they're scared of being disrespectful. And so we came up with a little list of things that you can ask and say when you're interacting with someone who discloses to you their disability. And I'm going to ask Marvelyne to help me stay on track with these. So what was our first point?
Well, the first point is, and I'm sorry, I'm a little, you know, we're doing this, we're doing this blind. We don't know blind reaction. Blind reactions is what they call it on Instagram. So being proud of yourself, being proud of the aspects that make you unique is certainly something we embrace. And I'm just throwing that out there. I know you know that, and everyone has a right to be proud of the aspects that
Who
make
they
them
are.
a unique
Sure.
human being and not ashamed of any aspect of yourself. If there's something you need to work on, you need to work on it. But that's a whole nother topic. Um, one of the things is that we've really found powerful is if someone discloses their disability to you or opens up the conversation about disability, that you listen carefully with all of your attention, and then you say, thank you for sharing that with me. Because the truth is, you are being honored usually when someone feels like you are a safe enough person that I can talk to this about. And I believe you will still continue to treat me as a human being.
This comes straight from my narrative medicine training. I took an entire semester on a course called witnessing, and that was witnessing another person giving and receiving accounts of oneself. And the first thing we do anytime someone shares a detail of their life that may be painful or may set them in a vulnerable space, we say, thank you. Thank you for sharing that with me. This isn't training as much as it is simply active listening and being aware and compassionate in the moment to what another person is sharing.
The thing as you're saying that I am so reminded of, the truth is, anytime someone shares something about themselves, disability or a trauma that they've been through or a struggle that they're having, the response of thank you for sharing that with me is understanding and honoring that person and whatever they're dealing with. And that's like a universal first response when you're paying attention and listening, is thank you for sharing that with me. And that has helped me understanding that that is a wise response, has helped me in so many different settings. But specifically today, it's about disability and just thanking them, because you thank another human being, an equal. You're thanking each other. So, you ready for number two?
Yeah.
Okay, number two. The second thing is in the continuum there would be thank you for sharing that. If you ever need assistance, I would be happy to help you with that. Or if you ever want to talk more about this, I will be happy to listen.
I think of that, this step number two, as almost signing a treaty that the two individuals in this now relationship have have signed an agreement, and that is the recognition that if you're almost like countries would sign an agreement, if you like the NATO treaty, if you ever need anything, please know that I am here to help you. Right? That's a compassionate response that shows that we are uh, a team player. And if someone responds to me in that way, if I am, say, traveling alone or I'm in public somewhere and I get turned around, I believe that it shows that that person is an ally with me, that they're not going to, they're not using this opportunity to bolster their own ego. They're service minded to help another individual who needs help. That's just a compassionate human response. When we share that common definition that we use with our students at Notre Dame, that is, compassion is witnessing suffering, being moved by it, having a desire to end that suffering or ease that suffering, and then actually taking a step to do something about it. That's the definition of compassion. And so what are we doing in this instance is we are actually doing something about it. And whether you consider a person who has a disability to be quote unquote suffering or not, that's really not a question, because as human beings, we all need help, right? No person is an island. So I feel like this idea of saying, um, I'm here, still comes back to the most compassionate words that we can ever say, right?
That's sly.
Which to
That's
another
good.
person is, I'm here. And I don't know. I kind of wrote a book called that. So,
Yeah.
uh, yeah. So
Uh,
carry on. Do you have a number
well,
3 for us, or do you have a thought?
the thought to me for responding with "if you ever" means you're not assuming they need help, because they may not. They may just have mentioned their situation because of a random reason, not because they're asking for your help. And it again puts you kind of on an equal playing field. If you need help, I'm here. It's perfectly fine if you don't. Now, I am going to say we have all, you and I, traveling so much, I'm sure other people too, have witnessed someone tries to help someone and the person that they thought needed help didn't need help and became a little aggravated in their response. If that happens, and randomly, if you think someone, oh, I need to help them with something, one, don't just grab them and pull them.
Oh
Always
my
ask.
goodness.
And then,
Yeah.
then two, if they're a little, I'm going to use the word grouchy that day, and they don't want to educate you, etc., don't be mad about that either. If they say they don't need help in an almost offended tone, understand that they may have been dealing with that all day long and they know exactly where they're going. And the more you touch them, the more turned around they're going to be. Now, you don't respond that way, but we've definitely been in the room, a waiting room, etc., when someone has responded that way.
Hmm.
Don't be offended. Let it go. Just frozen it out and
Yeah.
say, let it go. Because sometimes you are going to get a response that says, but that doesn't mean you don't need to offer the next person that you see and that same way of approach of, is there anything I can do? And let them tell you.
Yeah.
But
It's answer.
yeah, we don't assume. Um, and then the third thing is, if you are curious about someone's disability, and I know a lot of times this is a good tip to use with your children, because we want children to be able to approach someone with a disability or another child with a disability and not be afraid. Be curious and then accept their response. But if they've told you, if you've thanked them, then it's perfectly appropriate to ask, do you mind if I ask you a little bit more about that? Then whatever the person says is what they say. They may be open to discussing it. It may be something that energizes them to feel like they're educating the public on a unique illness or something of that nature. Or they may be like, yeah, I told you what I said and I don't want to talk about it anymore. And that's okay too. But the question of, do you mind if I ask you about that or how that works? I know with you, you get a lot of people curious about different technologies you use or how you maneuver different situations. And again, when we talk about disability, we kind of see it firsthand from a blindness aspect, but there's a lot of disability, right?
Sure. Sure.
So
Yeah.
asking to learn isn't a bad thing. And having your children, again, everyone's different, we're unique, but I have heard a lot of moms of children with disability groups that say, have your child come ask my child, say they're in a wheelchair, ask them, hey, how are you? That's a pretty dress. To not be afraid to approach. And then you hear little kids whisper, what's wrong with him? To their mom, and their moms will say, shh, don't talk about it. It may be better to walk over to the other person and say, hey, do you mind? Julie thinks Bobby's shoes are really cute. do you mind if they speak for a moment? And teaching that compassion, but it's not really compassion, it's human. Teaching that we're still all human, whatever our body functions at.
Yeah, and we certainly have a lot of interaction with kids because
We do.
of having a dog, and I learned very, very early on in life with the dog that if I'm going to have a dog in public, that is, I'm like less than 1% of the American population. Nowadays, it seems like everybody's got a dog in public, but back before things got out of hand, uh, I could count on being the only dog in the airport. I could be with the only dog in the airport, and so I had to learn that people were going to talk to me a lot about the dog, and I could either get frustrated that that's all I ever have to talk about. Or I could look at it as an educational opportunity for that individual. And I could learn how to succinctly and properly educate a person and also learn how to communicate just a little bit more competently so that if I did not want to spend the next 15 minutes educating a person, I could learn how to do it a lot more quickly. And so to this day, I still have kind of catchphrases and just almost a script that I say in certain interactions to educate the public about the dog. And I get the opportunity. I say I get the opportunity to do this a lot because I do. I mean, practically every time I go on an outing, there's a question from the public about the dog, and
And it
I
usually
don't get
starts with, can I
frustrated at
pet your
this.
dog?
Yeah, a lot of times it is, can I pet your dog, or what a beautiful dog? And so we have just learned how to to operate within the public and to educate and advocate at the same time.
And I'm going to repeat something from a little earlier because I think it's so, so important. This is an example of you, Marcus, have rules and procedures with your service dog, your guide dog, C&I dog. The next blind person may very well have a different set of rules, responses with theirs. So that comes back down to individuals are individuals not defined by whichever disability they have. And your last friend let you do this, and now this person won't. People are individuals. And we know people who you never touch their service dog. We know people who will give you a fake name if you ask what's your dog's name because they don't want to risk you distracting the dog by using the dog's name. That is their right, their freedom, their individuality. But are you wrong if you say, man, that's a beautiful dog? I used to have a lab. Most everybody loves labs because labs are amazing. Um, I used
Not that
to have a
we're a little
lab.
biased.
What, what's your dog's name? And a lot of times they'll say, may I ask you what your dog's name is? And I know for us, that's never offensive. And I'm saying us like it's part me, but it kind of is part me because I can get offended too. And have more
Because
than
you're
once.
human. These are, we don't walk around life ever looking to be offended, and I think
No,
that
no, no.
because we carry ourselves with a hopefully a compassionate grace and an openness just to humanity, I feel like maybe we invite in some of this advocacy work too, and that's okay. That's okay. That's what we get to do. That's what we get to do, and that's the life I get to lead because I get to have a dog in public as a service dog that is, of course, what protected by the Americans with Disabilities Act,
Yes.
and that's where we come back to this idea of Disability Pride Month, and how this month I'm trying to think of what I can individually do to celebrate or recognize this month besides just this podcast. And I kind of feel like maybe I should just keep doing what I'm doing, which is educating the public.
I, you educate on a lot of things that the public, I need to hear regularly, and this is a component of who you are and what you speak on. And we get to be in a public setting even when someone's not acting their best, and we have to get reinforcements, even those rarer and rarer, more rare occasions, because of the ADA. And there is a lot to be proud of for the people who fought to get that
Mm-hmm.
access. You wouldn't be on a plane. Most people wouldn't have been able to hear the rest of your messages if you had not had the ability to have equal access. And that includes technology. It includes so many things that give you the life that you want, and makes you be able to connect to people, because connection is the foundation of joy.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to
Yep.
find more joy in our lives. We're trying to find more pride in our lives. We're trying to find more compassion in our lives. And that's what we get to do on this podcast. So thank you all so much for joining us for this episode. And please visit marcusengel.com for any of your keynote speaking needs or hospital consulting, healthcare consulting, books, or virtual speeches, all on marcusengel.com. Again, this is Compassion and Courage, Conversations in Healthcare. I'm your host, Marcus Engel. My hostess is Marvelyne Engel. Thank you, baby, for being with me.
Thank you, and thanks for letting me pet your dog.
No problem. And thank you all so much for joining us on the podcast that teaches compassionate communication, provides perspective, and empowers and inspires resilience.
Thank you.